You guys know a lot of bad things happen in prison. Everybody knows that. One of the biggest appeals to hearing about prison life is the imminent violence, danger, and tension, and situations that normal people would otherwise never find themselves in. But it's not always bad. It's not always just dire straits at all times. There's a lot of times that a guy could look fondly back on certain certain areas. The camaraderie, the brotherhood. There are times when you can trust all the bros that are around you, and you know that each one of these guys would fight to the death for you, and vice versa. One of those times was the group of guys that I used to work out with in my first FCI. We still had weights, and they have time slots. During times certain, every move, every hour on the hour is a different time slot. So, and during those times, like we had, one race would have the bench press, or one of the two bench presses, and then one race would have the incline, and another race will have the squat rack and the curl station and stuff. And all the weights are spoken for too, all the way from the fucking plates down to the dimes, the nickels. Every single weight was accounted for, and it was always a really big deal if somebody grabbed a pair that didn't belong to them, because we're all, everybody here knows who gets what, and how it's divided up. And there are times, where there's some young bucks, some young young black guys from the city, that they just try to come in and get in wherever they can, and they grab a couple pair of weights, thinking they're out the way, and bam, there's an issue, because every single weight in here is spoken for. You got to get in with a pre-existing group, to get the weight access to the weights. Unfortunately, we always had a strong presence in the weight pile, so that we always had, there's times where guys will have the bench press, but they don't have enough weight to make use of it, because there are other races that were able to take and hold more weights than they need, because there's some super yoked out jack motherfuckers or something. But for the most part, if we're not using it, or we don't directly need it, you can use it. That's not a problem. But yeah, you know you could have whatever kind of day could be long. You could have a bunch of bullshit and all that stuff, but our time slot was the very last move for the night. So it started at like 8 o'clock, and then it went to like 9 o'clock or something like that. 8:50, or they do a 10-minute move too. So, but yeah, and so I used to always look forward to going to lift weights, and I lifted weights the entire time that I was there. I was there for 5 years, and I was significantly bigger than I am now. I learned a lot. I learned a lot. I learned, for one, I don't have the body type that's ever going to be a power lifter, or I had to work twice as hard to these guys are all of these guys, they're just monsters. They're animals. They can put 225 on and start warming up with that. Whereas I would work up to that, and I'd maybe hit that 3 or 4 times. And that's good for being 170, 180 pound guy. But for to the guys that were doing 305 and 315 and shit like that, it's nothing. So I was always hurting myself trying to keep up and impress these guys. There was a lot of pressure to look like you're doing a lot of weight, look like you're strong. But people know pound for pound. When this guy is like 280 pounds, he should be benching. He should be benching over 300 pounds, but not all that's muscle either. But yeah, it is what it is. So, anyways, but yeah, I used to always love looking forward to our weight pile time. It was always the same group of guys and stuff. We're all natives, we're all chiefs, and the atmosphere is definitely different. You know, it's definitely different from the pens. In the pens, we had that, but everything was a lot more guarded, a lot more reserved. It wasn't as laid back and easygoing as it was in my first FCI. But we had this big, rotund Southern brother named Kisto. He was TSO, I think, and he was asking one of my native bros, another Sioux brother. He said, "Hey, Blue Legs, how'd your family get their name Blue Legs?" And so Blue Legs, he was always down to spread some knowledge and some culture and stuff. He did a complete 180 in prison too, and kind of went super spiritual and became a pipe carrier and everything. It's pretty wild, and I know this dude's wild. I he had big ass pitchforks on his shoulder, and then he had the pitchforks burned off his shoulder. First, the pitchfork was done as a brand, meaning it was burned into his skin, and then he had three big ass fucking marks crossing it out. And then, so already you look at that, you're like, damn, this dude's fucking, this dude's about it, like whichever way he leans all the way in, 100%. So I did this big ass cover piece on his shoulder. It was the Statue of Liberty. It was crying. She had her hands over her face. And it was badass. It was fucking hella cool. Upside down flag in the background and shit. But yeah, he launches into this story, and I'd heard it before, but he's telling the guys at the weight pile, and he's like, yeah, you guys know how back in the day, warriors, he goes, when they defeated their enemy in battle, they would take something from them, right? Sometimes it's a hat, sometimes it's a knife, it's a rifle, or whatever. He goes, you see it on Dances with Wolves, they put on a jacket and stuff, and he goes, these things they're trophies of war, proof of their valor. And he said, my family fought against General Custer and them, right? So they had blue uniforms. He goes, and my great 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 grandfather or whatever took the pants. He goes, but we don't have the word for pants, in Lakota. That's a more of a newer term, I guess you could say. And so they called them leggings, right? Blue leggings. And that got shortened up over the years to just blue legs. And he was like, he's like, hey, yeah, that's pretty fucking cool. And he's like, yeah, he goes, I wish I had a story like that. He goes, I think they just call us Keisto. And you're like, hell yeah. And I was spotting for my boy Jumping Eagle. He was bench pressing, and he's short, and he's like super fucking stocky too. So he was doing like 315 or something like that too. And I was leaning over and I was watching him. He was on his last couple reps, and this whole conversation is going. And Blue Legs looks over at Jumping Eagle. He says, "Hey, Jump." She goes, "Why do they call you Jumping Eagle?" And Keisto goes, "Because he's too full of shit to fly." Fucking Jumping Eagle, like, just spit, like, literally went launched up into my face, and I fell back, and he fucking dropped the weight right on his chest, and everybody just fucking died laughing. That shit was fucking hilarious. I was laughing so fucking hard. I couldn't get the weight off Jump, and Jump was just, he was done. Like, he had no strength left in him to push at all. And so we're all fucking laughing and dying at the same time, and Jump is literally about ready to die with over 300 pounds on his chest, and the guys had to come over and grab the ends and lift them up. But fuck that. He said, because he's too full of shit to fly. Picture this fat little bald eagle just jumping around, can't take flight because oh hell no.